In 1994, a farmer in southeastern Turkey was plowing his field when his equipment kept catching on something buried underground. Large flat stones just below the surface, exactly where nothing should have been. He mentioned it to local authorities. Almost nobody expected what was actually down there. What archaeologists eventually uncovered wasn't a farmhouse foundation or a forgotten cemetery. It was a massive complex of carved stone pillars arranged in deliberate circles, some standing over 5 meters tall and weighing as much as 10 tons. And when they dated the site, the numbers didn't make sense. This place was built around 9,600 BC. That's nearly 12,000 years ago. For comparison, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 2,560 BC. This site is older than Egypt's pyramids by roughly 7,000 years, older than Stonehenge by about 6,000 years, older than writing, older than the wheel, older, in fact, than agriculture itself. This is Göbekli Tepe, and it broke one of archaeology's most fundamental assumptions. For over a century, the accepted story of civilization went like this. Humans became farmers first. Farming created surplus food. Surplus food allowed permanent settlements. Permanent settlements eventually organized into complex societies, and only then, with organized labor and religious hierarchy in place, did humans start building monumental architecture like temples. Göbekli Tepe flips that entire sequence upside down. The people who built this site were not farmers. Analysis of the surrounding area shows no evidence of domesticated crops or livestock at the time of construction. These were hunter-gatherers, small, mobile bands who tracked wild gazelle, gathered wild grains, and by every previous assumption shouldn't have had the spare time, the surplus resources, or the social organization required to build anything on this scale. And yet, they did. Let's talk about what they actually built, because the scale is genuinely staggering for the time period. The site consists of multiple circular enclosures, each one framed by a ring of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars. 2 even larger pillars stand at the center of each ring. Many of the pillars are covered in detailed carved reliefs. Foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures, and other animals, rendered with a level of artistic skill that implies specialized, practiced craftsmanship, not casual amateur work. Some of the pillars appear to have stylized arms carved into their sides, bent at the elbow, hands meeting near where a belt would be. Many researchers interpret this as evidence that the pillars represent stylized human or human-like figures, possibly ancestors, deities, or spirits, standing in formation within the circle. Now consider the engineering problem this represents. These pillars weigh up to 10 tons each. They were carved from limestone bedrock roughly 100 meters away, using only stone tools, because metal tools didn't exist yet anywhere on Earth. Then they were transported to the site and raised upright, without wheels, without draft animals for hauling, and without any of the organizational infrastructure we normally associate with monumental construction. Moving a 10-ton stone using only rope, timber, and coordinated human muscle requires dozens, possibly hundreds of people working together with a shared plan. That level of coordination implies something archaeologists didn't expect to find in hunter-gatherer societies: centralized planning, some form of leadership or ritual authority, and the ability to gather large numbers of people, feed them, and organize their labor toward a single, non-survival related goal. Which raises an obvious question. If they weren't farming yet, how did they feed everyone during construction? This is where Göbekli Tepe may connect to one of the biggest transitions in human history. Some researchers now argue the site itself may have driven the invention of agriculture, rather than the other way around. Gathering hundreds of hunter-gatherers in one place periodically to build and maintain these structures would have created enormous pressure to find a reliable food source close by. Wild cereal grains grow naturally in the region surrounding Göbekli Tepe. Genetic studies of modern domesticated wheat trace its wild ancestor to this exact area of southeastern Turkey. In other words, the need to feed a large temporary population gathered for religious or ceremonial construction may have been one of the pressures that pushed hunter-gatherers toward deliberately planting and managing wild grain. Religion, in this theory, didn't emerge after agriculture created stable societies. Religion may have helped invent agriculture by giving people a reason powerful enough to gather in large numbers, long before farming existed to support them. That's a complete reversal of the old assumption, and it's still hotly debated among archaeologists today. But the timeline lines up in a genuinely unsettling way. Here's another detail that makes Gobekli Tepe even stranger. At some point, roughly 1,000 years after major construction phases, the enclosures were deliberately buried. Not abandoned to erosion or collapse, but intentionally filled in with rubble, sediment, and debris, seemingly on purpose. Nobody is entirely certain why. Some researchers suggest older enclosures were ritually decommissioned once new ones were built nearby, buried almost like a ceremonial retirement rather than destruction. Others propose the burial was protective, an attempt to preserve something sacred from later disturbance. Either way, that deliberate burial is precisely why the site survived in such remarkable condition for thousands of years, hidden under a low, unremarkable hill until a farmer's plow struck stone in 1994. Gobekli Tepe isn't alone either. Since its discovery, archaeologists have identified similar nearby sites, including one called Karahan Tepe, suggesting this wasn't an isolated one-off structure, but part of a broader regional tradition of monumental construction by pre-agricultural societies across this part of the Fertile Crescent. So what does all of this actually mean for how we understand the beginning of civilization? It means the old, tidy timeline, farming first, then villages, then religion, then monuments, was too simple. Human social complexity, organized labor, symbolic art, and possibly organized religious belief appear to have existed before agriculture, not after it. Hunter-gatherers weren't simply small, scattered bands with no capacity for large-scale cooperation. Given the right motivation, whether spiritual, social, or something we may not fully understand yet, they were capable of organizing thousands of person-hours of skilled labor, without farming, without writing, and without the wheel. Gobekli Tepe forces a genuinely uncomfortable question. What if monumental belief, the human drive to build something meaningful and lasting together, came first? What if farming wasn't the cause of civilization, but one of its consequences? We may never know exactly what ceremonies took place inside those stone circles, or what the carved foxes and vultures and headless human figures actually meant to the people who carved them. But we do know this: nearly 12,000 years ago, before the wheel, before writing, before a single domesticated crop existed anywhere on Earth, a group of hunter-gatherers looked at a hillside in southeastern Turkey and decided to build something bigger than any of them. Something meant to last. And it did. It waited under that hill for almost 12,000 years until a farmer's plow finally struck stone and rewrote what we thought we knew about the beginning of everything. If you want more, subscribe and hit the bell. Don't miss what's coming next.